Fellas, if I ask you to imagine a society where everyone is happy, would you picture a thermonuclear war? Because today, that's what it will take for us to eliminate depression on a global scale. You see, the world is sick, and it's not about making our society better, it's about making others worse. To start things off, I'll be choosing the difficulty and the map type. There are quite a few options, but I usually like to go with the continents. Then we'll add all the fun countries, which I thought would have interesting dynamics, and for myself, I'll be picking the only logical option in this game. A pious leader, perfect for a religious game, so naturally I have disabled religion and turned off the turn limit, locking the doors behind us. Right off the bat, we got a decent start in the well-known continent of Nuna. For our first settlement, a river and a few mineable resources around us will increase our production and jumpstart our campaign. At the top left, we got our resources, research, culture, gold, and the rest we won't even think about. We picked mining as our first project and started recruiting a scout to prospect our surrounding area, immediately running into a barbarian scout. Barbarians don't really have any real cities, but if they spot your settlement, they will immediately beeline towards their camp and start spawning waves of units. So we're going to get a unit of slingers and station them on our walls, whilst trying to take out their scout before they can make it back to the camp of hooligans. It's at this point when we met our first civilizations of the game. One of them sent us a cheese basket, the other one offered a ticket to the gulag. But more importantly, there was an alarming amount of receding hairlines in the region. So naturally, our people were so excited that half of our current population has decided to move. Additionally, we met our first city-state, which again is also not a real faction, but they can offer a bunch of bonuses and their military aid if we ally with them. We also found a barbarian camp leisurely camping on the cliffs and engaged in a non-consensual annihilation of their primitive society in a mutual suicide agreement. Now our society can focus on exploiting land for its natural resources and craftsmanship. Also, I was trying to find a good place for our next city, which could potentially benefit from being around the riverline and conveniently placed next to Geneva. It was clear that we needed to establish a city somewhere in the southern region to access resource-rich lands and enemy civilians. As we were sharing the continent with the Germans and the British, we managed to get enough religion to start a pantheon, which will allow us to quickly build whatever we need in newly formed cities. Now that we've met all of our neighbors, we could finally start our loan business, offering a sum of money for a higher return over time, which will allow us to slowly but steadily scale our economy. Only after setting up a third city have I realized how close the French really are, and in addition to unlocking a governor, you can choose from a variety of city leaders that will give us benefits, depending on the situation or whatever you need at the moment. But I didn't see anyone brandishing a gun, so instead I went with the only man that was wearing a turban, who coincidentally will also boost our science. Since I was getting increasingly nervous because the English wanted to become friends, while the French were insulting me, I think. But regardless, there are quick solutions to all of our problems. Oh, and it seems like the barbarians are attacking our city. We sent a small scouting force to the south, but upon seeing very little to no troops, I have decided instead to just start shooting. The English were pretty upset, but they were far away, so they don't pose any threat, as I'm sure nobody has ever said that before. To boost our offensive capabilities, and because one that shall not be named was not a thing yet, we have conscripted a local elephant population into our army. France mobilized their military and attempted to flank us. Our archers weren't enough to hold them back for now, but we're going to need more weapons. To study the arts of war, I have started to build a great library and recruited another governor in the form of a diplomat, by sending her to the Geneva, making sure no conventions are taken without us knowing first. After trampling the local peasant population, we captured Rowan, and I didn't feel like repeatedly killing the peasants, as fun as it is, didn't really align with our current war strategy. Our war lasted well into the medieval ages, and due to our accomplishments in the previous age, we got something called the Golden Age, which let us choose from an exclusive pool of dedications not accessible by the rest of the dirty countries around us. After Lyon fell, we kept the city as a forward base of operations. An emergency session of the World Congress took place, where Germany and Canada joined the French in the hopes of stopping our advances. The concerning part was that Geneva joined them too. So now we shifted towards the First World War. Only problem is their tech was a little more advanced than ours. We've upgraded our half-beaten archer unit into our first crossbowmen and stationed them as a garrison in Lyon, while our elephants engaged against their cavalry. Feeling inspired, our people were not only determined to claim their rightful place in the world, but make sure we don't share with anyone else. So we embraced the monarchy and crowned a king, whilst also transitioning policies into something better equipped to deal with our newfound social values. While our single unit was defending, we sent a small group of reinforcements, but our heavy investment into research was starting to pay off in the form of gunpowder, which is unsurprisingly an effective counter to swords. Even nearby Russian cities started rebelling and joining our cause. Eventually, we wiped the enemy out and we won the coalition war. Suddenly, the French and Canadians have decided they wanted peace, which we were happy to accept as we needed time to rebuild and deal with the potential rebellions. Only the Germans, staying accurate to the lore, decided to keep fighting, but our form of negotiations proved to be very persuasive. We now also finally have the ability to scale our industrial infrastructure and invest into the better civic technologies, maybe even burn down a local forest or two. In addition, our loan program was once again booming. Even the French were happy to see the humanitarian packages meant for reconstruction of our future colonies. With the remaining funds and resources, we established banking branches across multiple cities to prey on financially vulnerable, and began researching coal power to really boost our industrialization. Speaking of, we've entered the Renaissance era of innovation. We made a dedication to reform our coinage, which will grant us +1 era score every time our trader completes their route, and with a few great scientists, we started propelling our country ahead. As I was positioning my troops for a diplomatic intervention, England has requested aid as they were ravaged by a natural disaster. Since I was pretty much a warmongering lunatic, hated by everyone, I decided to seek closer relations with Russia, in exchange for embassies within our capitals. Finally, we have unlocked the coal power plants. Combined with the steam power and railways, we were keen on establishing ourselves as a dominant power in the region. So committed, in fact, that we entered the industrial era in Dark Age. France thought it was a good idea to insult us during our rebellious teenage years of being criminally insane. With the invention of economics and diplomatic services, I had to start catching up to Germany in terms of scientific prowess, as we were lacking scientists, and since they gave us a reason, and also because I'm a homicidal maniac, I've decided to assimilate the French into our empire. Well, those who survive at least. In response, the French Republic have sent the bravest trebuchet warriors against our muskets and cannons. Naturally, the coalition was formed once more, and even the God joined against me. Again, after quickly sieging down Paris and repairing our vital industrial sectors, we finished France off and started shifting our troops against the unarmed civilians, fully deserving an Iron Cross for such effective use of violence. In the meantime, we started pushing into Canada and skirmishing against German cavalry in the desert plains. Luckily, everyone else was still on crossbowmen, so after raising one of their cities, we pieced them out, focused solely on fighting Germany and nature. After losing a lot of troops to the boredom of bombing too many enemy civilians, we started to enter the most important stage of our empire's history, colonialism. We'll be violently seeking out oil to fuel our industries, as opposed to being the beacon of liberty and rights we were up until now. With the coalition once again defeated, we could start the construction in the attempt to rebuild and bury the dead bodies, as our crops were developing a very distinguished taste of rotting human flesh. With the absorption of France, we became a scientific and military powerhouse, but England on the other side of the continent was also growing, meaning we'll need more guns in our empire. But you know what's better than guns? Bombs. And it was time for India to start an air force. The downside of our warmongering is that now we have less people to give loans to, so instead we'll have to focus on new ideas that could potentially help our civilization to advance, such as the sewer systems that will aid both in a hygiene and housing market. There also seems to be a massive religious war raging between our borders, which grew our capital not only as a center of our empire but also of the continent. With the ability to produce the big metal bird, we have now reached the second part of the most important stage of our empire, nationalism, before the first great diplomatic mission of our time begins. We've managed to sway and recruit a lot of city-states as our allies, including Geneva. We also upgraded our artillery units, as we now had access to important resources such as oil, making Germany very nervous. With the air groups completed and urbanization projects underway, I've extended some trading treaties with the great English city of Moscow. We began researching nuclear energy by gaslighting the world that it is both safer and cheaper, and thanks to our accumulated great people coupons, we've traded in for a merchant that will allow us to instantly annex a city-state. For the next few turns, our continent knew peace and prosperity. Well, except for the droughts and rebellions. Our policies were updated once again, like some elusive terms of service that you're too lazy to read, as we've entered the golden age of the atomic era, greatly upsetting the Germans, which I am convinced at this point are just offended by our breathing. We have invented a solution to all of our problems. Final solution, if you may, which meant that the value of their opinion was about to be substantially reduced. Thanks to our excessive resource hoarding, we're now able to convert them into tangible assets, such as wealth and actionable war strategy against Canada, involving lots of explosions. Because, well, oil. To speed the transition, we formed the world's first tank corps and discovered some uranium. We got our bombers into position and England decided to suddenly become friends, as if we're not about to massacre a lot of people. Thanks to our dedicated warmongering, we're now able to declare wars without generating too many grievances. Or well, it would if we weren't bombing civilians, introducing German cities to their natural predator. Something about their enemy pikemen getting strafed by World War II fighters living rent-free inside my head. We got ourselves another tank to defend the mountain pass, all while maintaining a comprehensive bombing campaign, just in time for nuclear warfare and Cold War. After converting our power plants to nuclear energy, we started the Manhattan Project. Germany, just like our currency, was slowly being converted into piles of explosions, which made the World Congress really awkward. On one hand, we requested aid against natural disasters. On the other hand, we were murdering more people than all of our natural disasters combined, which caused Canada, who we're currently at war with, to agree to send financial aid, whilst another Russian city decided to join our empire. With all the fun and games, new ideas have begun forming in our society. Ideas of significance, of conscience. Our bombers surely needed them, being outnumbered and all, by pikemen. After securing more territory and sources of uranium, Germany sent some tanks of their own, which were introduced to the Monroe Doctrine, and caused China to start sending us death threats. After we took over the last Canadian city and unlocked totalitarianism, we spent some time rebuilding the rubble, except for Magdeburg specifically, instead running over people with our tanks. Russia got even more upset after we sent the first rocket into space and unlocked stealth technologies. Our new jet bombers were racking up high KDs. We unlocked satellites which will help us with targeting and navigation systems by revealing the entire world along with the remaining empires we haven't met up until this point. We got our first mechanized infantry, and basically took over German cities in the south very quickly. The world climate was getting worse, and not just politically. We had an opportunity to switch to democracy, but at this point it was way more fun. So fun, in fact, that we built nuclear deterrence against anyone who would try to ruin it. We truly embraced our role-playing by unlocking capitalism and bombing some more barbarians. Germany asked for another peace agreement. This time we agreed, as we could rebuild the entire southern part of the map, as we were just burning endlessly, increasing global warming I mentioned earlier. Our nuclear program was taken off along with our astronauts, securing the moon landing and dealing with few major droughts, and start planning on leaving this planet behind. China was the only other civ that could challenge us in science victory and in colonization of Mars. I decided to amend that by creating a task force with thermonuclear strike capabilities, just in case, which was a good timing because the climate was getting worse for unknown reasons. We transitioned to the information era and got another golden age, which let us choose from more interesting dedications. One of them, death robots. And the best part about death robots is that they are immune to radiation. We had to make sure that nobody could follow us out of this godforsaken rock, starting with the Vatican City. To stop us, the world declared a nuclear emergency, as if it was causing problems or nuclear energy being potentially dangerous. With the last German cities destroyed, our time on this planet was almost over. Only one more thing was left to do. We started off the World War III by nuking England back into the Stone Age, starting with the London, accidentally killing our spy, which I completely forgot about, destroying major cities in the first wave of our nuclear carpet bombing. I guess we won't need this city anymore. Then proceeded to nuke Moscow, and had a choice between taking it, raising it, or returning it. The choice is obvious. Then I sent in our death robots to clean up the environment, which meant less pollution after the nuclear fallout is gone. In the meantime, I accidentally got a science victory, as we finally left the planet, but we weren't done yet. Not until we purged the world. England attempted to stop us with their fighters unsuccessfully, and pretty soon it all returned to the natural state, if you ignore the radiation. As a parting gift to the world in our campaign after England's death, we sent a few rockets into the other continent, specifically Baltimore, upsetting nobody in the process, which meant the World Congress decided it was a perfect time to hold sports games.